Right, then let's get down to the brass tacks of what we actually saw at Silverstone. Because beneath that I'm Batman black livery lies a technical puzzle that should have the rest of the grid reaching for the paracetamol. Cadillac didn't just turn up for a photo op. They brought a 2026 spec chassis to the track while most teams are still arguing over wind tunnel calibration. This shakedown was a high-stakes data-gathering exercise for a set of regulations that are quite frankly the most complex in the history of the sport. We're talking about a move toward a 50-50 power split between the internal combustion engine and the electrical systems. And Cadillac is already out there trying to make sure their batteries don't turn into very expensive heaters. What if Cadillac isn't here to learn Formula One, but to challenge it? Technically, the 2026 power unit is a different beast entirely, and Cadillac's approach is fascinating. By ditching the MGUK, the bit that turns heat into electricity, F1 has essentially made the turbochargers simpler, but the energy management infinitely more difficult. The intelligent ICE is being dialed back from about 550 kW to 400 kW, roughly 535 brake horsepower, but the MGUK, the kinetic energy recovery bit, is jumping from 120 kW to a massive 350 kW. That's nearly 470 brake horsepower coming purely from the battery. Watching the Cadillac exit the slower corners at Silverstone, you could see the struggle for traction. Managing that instant torque delivery without the car spinning like a top is going to be the defining engineering battle of 2026. Now, let's talk about the X mode and Z mode. If you're a bit of a nerd for Aero, the 2026 regulations are your Christmas. The Cadillac we saw features active aerodynamics, which is essentially the rear and front wings moving in sync to reduce drag on the straights and increased downforce in the corners. On the Hangar Straight, the Cadillac looked visibly different, sleeker, almost tucked in. The X mode is the low drag configuration, and seeing it deploy in real time during a shakedown suggests that Cadillac's control software is already remarkably mature. Most teams are worried about the wings failing and sending the car into the North Sea. Cadillac seemed to be toggling through the settings with total confidence. The chassis itself has undergone a bit of a diet. The 2026 cars are tended cms narrower down to 1.9 m and have a shorter wheelbase reduced from 3.6 m to 3.4 m. This makes the Cadillac look far more darty and agile than the current boats we see on the grid. At Silverstone's Maggots and Beckett's complex, the car appeared to change direction with a level of sharpness that suggests the weight distribution is spot on. They are targeting a minimum weight of around 768 kg, and in a world where every gram of carbon fiber is a prisoner, Cadillac's packaging looked impressively tight, especially around the side pods, which have to house those massive new ERS cooling systems. The choice of Sergio Perez for this run wasn't just about his sponsor backing, it was about his right foot. Perez is known as one of the best tire whisperers in the business. And for a shakedown, you need a driver who can feel a vibration through the floor before the sensors even pick it up. He was tasked with system verification, which is engineer speak for making sure the thing doesn't explode. The fact that he was fired up suggests the car has a predictable balance. In a 2026 car where the engine mapping changes depending on where you are on the track to save energy, having a driver who can adapt to a constantly shifting power curve is vital. Then you have Valtteri Bottas, the man who spent years at Mercedes during their era of hybrid dominance. He knows exactly what a world-class ERS system should feel like. While he was watching from the garage, you can bet he was looking at the telemetry traces for energy, deployment, and harvesting. The 2026 regs require the cars to harvest 9 megajoules of energy per lap, triple what they do now. If Cadillac can master the harvesting phase without making the car feel like it's hitting a wall under braking, they'll have a massive advantage. Bottas's technical feedback on the brake-by-wire system will be the secret sauce that makes this car drivable. Let's look at the cooling, because it's a bit of a nightmare. With the MGUK doing 3 times the work, the batteries get incredibly hot. The Cadillac's cooling inlets look significantly revised compared to the mule car they ran at IMLA last year. There's a sophisticated in-wash philosophy happening with the side pods, directing air not just over the car, but through it to manage the thermal loads of that 350 kW's electric motor. If you get the cooling wrong, the battery derates and you're a sitting duck on the straights. Cadillac's designers have clearly spent some serious time in the CFD, computational fluid dynamics, suite to avoid the kettle on wheels scenario. The engine situation is the elephant in the room. Currently, they are using a Ferrari customer unit as a placeholder while the GM power unit is in development. But don't think for a second this is just a rebadged H. This chassis is a pure Cadillac GM design. By using the Ferrari 2026 unit for the shakedown, they are isolating the variables. They know the engine works. Now they are proving the chassis can handle the torque and the aero loads. It's a pragmatic, clinical way to build a race team. It's less yeehaw and more precision instrument, which is exactly what you need when you're going up against the likes of Mercedes and Red Bull powertrains. The fuel is another hidden statistic. 2026 marks the switch to 100% sustainable fuels. This changes the energy density and the combustion characteristics of the V6. Cadillac's engineers are working with Aramco and other partners to ensure the fuel flow meters, which are strictly regulated to 100 km per hour, don't limit their top-end speed. Watching the car pull through the gears at Silverstone, the engine notes sounded crisp, not muffled. This suggests the combustion efficiency is already high, which is a testament to the thousands of hours spent on the dyno before the car even touched the tarmac. The spy footage that's been doing the rounds on social media actually reveals quite a bit if you look closely at the floor edges. The 2026 cars have a simplified floor compared to the current ground effect monsters, aiming to reduce the dirty air following the car. Cadillac's floor fences look surprisingly intricate for a shakedown car. It tells me they aren't just testing basic reliability. They're already testing performance aero. They are looking for that clean down force that doesn't disappear when you're stalking a rival through Chapel Curve. I love the directness of Graeme Eldon's leadership here. He's not promising podiums in Melbourne. He's talking about verifying car systems. It's that British pragmatic streak mixed with American resources. The team has managed to gel in a live garage environment, which is a fancy way of saying they didn't trip over each other when the car came in for a wing adjustment. In F1, pit lane chemistry is worth 1/10 of a second, and Cadillac seems to have bypassed the awkward first date phase and gone straight into a committed relationship with the stopwatch. One of the most interesting stats from the 2026 regs is the override function, a sort of KERS on steroids for overtaking. The Cadillac steering wheel is already bristling with dials and paddles to manage this. The driver will have to decide when to deploy that extra 350 kWs to make a pass. Perez, being a master of racecraft, will be instrumental in defining how that logic is programmed. The shakedown allowed them to test the physical interface of these new controls. It's no use having 1,000 horsepower if the driver has to be a concert pianist just to find the boost button. Looking at the tires, Pirelli is bringing in a slightly narrower 18th in tire for 2026 to help with the overall weight reduction. Cadillac's suspension geometry at the front looked remarkably clean. lightly designed to manage the specific scrub radius of these new tires. Getting the front tires into the operating window is the dark art of modern F1. If the Cadillac can switch on its tires faster than the Audi or the Alpine, they'll be bagging points in the opening flyaway races purely on tire management. The 2026 car has to be nimble, a word F1 hasn't used in a decade. By reducing the width and the wheelbase, the FIA wants to see more overtaking. Cadillac's car looks like it's been designed with this racing philosophy in mind. It doesn't have the long wheelbase stability that makes modern cars feel like they're on rails. It looks like it requires a bit more manhandling. Bottas with his rallying background and Perez with his street circuit flickability are the perfect pair to exploit a car that's designed to be tossed into a corner. We also have to consider the ghost of the project, the thousands of hours of simulation. For every lap Perez did at Silverstone, the team has likely done 10,000 laps in the virtual world. The shakedown is the moment of truth where you see if the real world matches the digital world. If the Aero loads at 180 MFS match the wind tunnel data, the engineers can sleep easy. If they don't, it's back to the drawing board. Given the smiles in the garage, I'd wager the correlation is looking pretty damn good. The role of Zhou Guanyu as a reserve driver shouldn't be overlooked. He's the data bridge. Having recently driven the current generation of cars, his feedback on how the 2026 Cadillac feels in comparison to the 2024-2025 machinery is invaluable. You can tell the engineers if the nimble concept has actually worked or if the car just feels nervous. His social media leak was a clever bit of authentic marketing that reminded us all that this is a global project with eyes on every market. As we head toward the Barcelona pre-season test behind closed doors, mind you, the intrigue only grows. Cadillac has 3 days to prove their reliability. If they can rack up 100+ laps a day, it'll send a shock wave through the pit lane. The blacked-out test car will eventually give way to the Super Bowl race livery, but the technical DNA of what we saw at Silverstone will remain. This isn't just a first look. It's a look at a team that has done its homework, checked its math, and is now ready to take the exam. In the end, Cadillac's 2026 shakedown was a masterclass in quiet competence. They didn't need a massive fireworks display. The sound of that V6 and the sight of those active wings did all the talking. They've got the drivers, they've got the data, and they've got the backing. 2026 season might still be a way off, but Cadillac has already taken the lead in the race to be ready. It's a fascinating, technical, and slightly humorous welcome to the party from Detroit to the rest of the F1 world. And if I were at Red Bull or Ferrari, I'd be looking over my shoulder.